Hard fact, copywriting and creative writing are not the same thing. There are a lot of really strong writers out there, and in fact, that's how we were taught to write in high school, was really floral and over the top. That's not what copywriting is. So there are a lot of mistakes being made out there on marketing materials, whether it's your social media posts, email marketing, blog posts, or even just a flyer that you're printing out and handing out at an event. What we're going to walk through today is what the differences are between creative writing and copywriting, and how you can become a stronger writer to make sure that your marketing business goals are being attained. Now, I am a creative writer by choice. That is one of my favorite things to do, but I am also a copywriter by trade, and that is a totally different skill set. It's so, I actually have to switch this thing off in my brain when I go to write copy, because it is a lot different. It's a lot more tactical, and you don't have to use a thesaurus as much. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of questions on this one today because I have to fight tooth and nail for this with clients all the time. So please leave me comments down below. I will be happy to answer those questions for you. Let's start with the basics. Let's define what those two different writing styles are, and then that way it'll be easier to kind of break down and decant what exactly the differences are between those two things. Copywriting is words that are placed on a marketing touch point in order to make the reader take action. Creative writing, on the other hand, is what we see in poems and novels and has a much more artistic flair to it. It's really trying to make the reader feel something, go on a journey. And as you can see, that's not really a marketing tactic because it's not getting people to do what we want them to do in our business goals. In copywriting, we want to use the least amount of words as possible. It's really important that we capture the audience's attention right away and tell them what's in it for them. It's, again, this is a marketing touch point. So we all have learned, because we see ads all day, every day, to have what's called banner blindness. So if I know I'm being marketed to, there's actually a part of my brain that will shut that down and only skim, do I actually need that? Or just move on with my day. In fact, readers only consume about 20% of the copy you put on something. So if you spent all this time adding floral words and going over the top with how you're telling someone something, they might not understand why you're telling them it and how it will actually benefit them. The fact of the matter is, people just simply don't have time to read everything that you've spent the time putting together. We have hundreds of emails popped into our inboxes and junk folders every day from marketing channels. We see social media all day, every day, and even when we're at an event, flyers are handed to us left, right, and center. So how do we cut through? One of the best ways to do that is with your headlines. 8 out of 10 people say they only read the headlines on something. Now, this can often persuade them into reading a little bit further down if it applies to them, but it does show us that the most important thing is how we start the exact communication that we're doing. How are you starting that caption? How are you starting your email marketing? If it's going to be something blasé, they're going to be like, okay, thank you, next. I'm going to take you through 4 extremely simple formulas that we often use in copywriting. So these can be done in a short form or in a longer form, but today I really want to run you through those 4 basics. They're a great way to sort of framework your captions and your emails and all of the other things that you're putting together. So there are 4 really simple ways to structure anything that you are copywriting to drive the reader to make an action. The first formula I want to talk about is what we call before-after bridge. So before is we quickly call out something that they're currently feeling, oh, is it so hard to be you because of X, Y, and Z? Then we tell them what they will feel after doing that thing, and then we're going to go ahead and show them how to get there, getting from the before to the after. Let me show this to you in 3 simple sentences based around what I'm actually teaching you right this moment. So we'd start with the before. Are you struggling with your copywriting? Then we'll move into the after section. Once you understand these basics, you'll be able to write copy that converts. The last tip in there is to make sure to bridge that before idea and the after idea. So we would say something to them like, these 4 formulas will get you there. The second formula we're going to talk about today is AIDA. Now, this is just an acronym, easy one. It's attention, interest, desire, and action. First, we're going to start with attention right away. Again, going back to that point about headlines, we want to grab their attention right off the hop. Make sure they're like, oh yeah, that one, oh, what's that? It applies to me. This is where we often see those scammy things when sex sells and things like that. But again, we're just really trying to capture that audience. So headlines are a way to do that in a much less scandalous way. The next thing is interest. So now that we have their attention, how do we keep them interested? I always think about this as like when someone asks you out on a date, you're like, oh man, that guy's really hot. But then what keeps you around? You know, he has to actually have a good conversation with you and provide you with some value that you didn't know before. It's the exact same thing in copywriting. Tell them a little bit about your knowledge on it. Build that trust, those types of things that will keep the interest of the reader. And we want to talk about desire. So even going a little further with that metaphor about dating, it also, after you have that interest, what gets them to that next step? How can you show them this desire that they want to be with this person and how much better it'll make their life? This is the same idea, same principle. You really want to drive home that their life will be so much better with your service or product. Last but not least is action. So this is always incredibly important that we write a strong call to action. Don't just be like, wouldn't it be great to be with me, and then never call them or give them your number. No, you have to say, hey, call me at this number. We'll get together to live this perfect life together. It's the exact same thing when you're copywriting. Make sure to be clear and concise on the next action you want them to take. And remember, the action doesn't always have to jump them to the final thing. If you're trying to sell a really expensive product or I don't know, a car or something like that, you don't want to be like, hey, join right away. Maybe what we're doing is just nudging them into the sales funnel and we're just getting them into that first step. At that point, we can do a lot of different things. So remember, the action doesn't always have to be buy, book. It doesn't have to be that. It's just getting them nudged along down that sales funnel a little bit by a little bit. The next thing I want to talk about is one that has been around for a long time. This is what we call problem, agitate, and solve. So basically what we want to do is capture their attention by highlighting a problem that they have in their life. Maybe it's a lack of time. Maybe it's that they're not eating healthy enough, whatever that problem is that they are irritated by in their day-to-day life that you can solve. What we want to do is first highlight what that problem is, and then we want to agitate it. So what we're going to do is be like, you can either, win and sit back and not have any time and lose your wife and all these things. You're going to actually drive it home in an irritating, agitating way. And then what we do is problem solve for them. So tell them, hey, actually, you know what? This is actually what we can do to help you out. And the last point today is not actually a formula as much as it is 4 things that I want you to think about, and those are the 4 C's. So no matter what you are writing, I really want to make sure you tick the box of having the 4 C's in every communication that you put into written word. First, it's going to be clear. So it has to be really easy to understand. We're not making the reader feel stupid and using words that are over their head. You also have to remember, we live in a global economy now. We have people living in our cities that speak different languages. We want to keep this as simple as possible so that not only are they not turned off by our brand, but that they just get the messaging immediately. The next one is concise. Now, coming from a creative writing background, this is super challenging because what we would do is get into the nitty-gritty, really paint the picture, show all the details. Don't just tell me her hair was blonde, tell me it was the color of spun gold. Like, it's all of those things that we used to be taught in English class that we need to take off the plate. We want to make it as few words as possible. Jump to the point, make that reader see the least amount. We don't want to have that whole too long, don't read kind of situation happening in any of our copywriting. The third of the 4 C's is that it needs to be compelling. So don't just be fact driven. Just go in there with a little bit of an emotional thing that attaches people to you. What are you going to solve for them? How will you make their life better? How will you make them feel? Will they feel beautiful or healthy or in love? Or what are those things that you are going to do to compel them to take action? And last but not least is credibility. This is so important. We are out there trying to build trust through these communications, and having credibility in your specific field. Don't be afraid to toot your own horn a little bit. It doesn't even have to be about you specifically. It can be about maybe some experience that you've had or someone on your team. It doesn't matter as long as we're really showing that we're the person to come to for this advice. No matter what you're copywriting, be sure that you're always keeping your brand voice intact. Now, a lot of people think about their brand in a very visual aspect, but let me tell you, the words that you choose to use are extremely important to who you're attracting, how you sound, and making sure that you're identifying yourself with who you want to be and who you want to show up in the world. Brand voice is something that we could really do a deep dive with you on, but that's a very personal action. So if you do want to do that, be sure to leave me a comment or shoot a DM. I always want to make sure that brands company-wide are all speaking the same. So the sales department is speaking in a certain way. We all know the same industry jargon. We all say things in the same way. It's so important that if I am trying to, address a room full of 60-year-old men, that I'm not talking like a teenage girl. It needs to be the right choice of words that's understandable to that audience. The bottom line here is that words really matter. And as a creative writer, I know that. But I also, as a copywriter, need to be cognizant of how I'm keeping people's attention. And as I always say, what is the goal of that initiative? If the goal is to get them to click a link, are they doing that? If the goal is to get them to send that to a friend and bring them to an event you're hosting, are they doing that? What we really need to do is make sure we're identifying that goal and choosing the least amount of poignant words in order to get to that goal. Thank you so much for popping in and watching this video. I really hoped it helped you identify maybe some gaps in maybe too floral writing that you're putting together for some of your copy. If you have any questions, please be sure to leave me a comment, ring the bell, and subscribe to my channel so that you can get a notification every time I drop a new video. We'll catch up with you guys next time. See you soon.